Okay, so next up we have the Schoology uh, Schoology update.
Thank you, President Johnson and trustees. As we shared last week, we know that this summer was planned to be a time when our summer school teachers would take on the task and the challenge of a major implementation of Schoology. They've done that over the 20-some days of summer learning. And I just want to give a big shout out to all the teachers that have stepped into it, have really had a heavy lift to have to roll out a curricula and teacher classes and implement Schoology at the same time. I appreciated the AAPS news story, and trustees and community members, if you've not seen that, Joe Mathis did a very nice job of highlighting our implementation of Schoology. Behind all of that, we have been addressing and really collecting concerns about Schoology at the lower L level, especially. So we're not varnishing or covering over that. We know that that is a concern, and ended up in a conversation on Twitter with several teachers, all of whom are just rock star teachers. And just among that small group could see that they have very different opinions about what we should do next. So what I've asked Dr. Kellstrom to do, and she's already on this task, as well as Assistant Superintendent Linden, is to work with our elementary team and to sort through what is the best plan for Schoology in the fall. I want to be clear, trustees, that process is still in motion. So we're not coming tonight with any clear decision or outcome, but we did want to bring an update. So Dr. Kellstrom has, I don't know if you have more meetings or if you've had them all. It's only Wednesday. I know summer school wraps up tomorrow, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they're very near the end of their session. So Dr. Kellstrom, just informally, and I know you may have some slides or you may not, it's fine either way. We just want kind of the lay of the land, knowing that we're not to a decision yet, but we're still talking and visiting with folks about this challenge.
Sure. Good evening, board. Glad to be here to talk about our Schoology implementation. I thought I would just go back just a step in case any of our viewers don't really understand what a learning management system is and how we got into this business of getting into a learning management. When we met back in May and we talked about the need for this from all of our COVID time, our early COVID time teaching, we realized that we needed a more robust system that would be a common portal or a place that staff and students and families could access, that would offer equitable access to a location and to content, the same content across grade levels, that it would be a safe and secure environment for students of all ages, that teaching and learning would be organized not only for the actual learning to students, but also the professional development for teachers, that we would offer space where interactions and collaborations could take place. We know that we can't replace that in-person learning, but we need to offer an environment and a virtual place where we can try to do our best at those extensions. And then that we had a tool that offered a level of rigor. And we've talked a lot tonight about rigor, and we've taken comments at the very beginning about rigor, and a place where learning objectives can be aligned, where mastery and rubrics could be built, and where formative assessments could be taken and shared not only with students, but some of them with the families, and a place of transparency where learning and teaching can happen. And that is, you know, the crux of what a learning management system is. We were fortunate in the spring to have tools. So a valued peer in the district said to me, life's always good as a metaphor. So when we look at our tools that we have and have had, metaphors can be drawn. So Schoology is really a toolbox. It houses a lot of our tools, but it is the box that keeps it all together, keeps everybody on track and going. And then we have a bunch of tools that fit inside and that we use. And so a great tool to use is Seesaw. It is a tool that we would reach out to do things with, but it is not the main tool. We have other tools like an Ed Puzzle. Your children, if you have children in the district, they might have participated with a tool called Ed Puzzle or Flipgrid or a formative piece. And those fit inside of the toolbox. And so I just really want to lay that first framework out there before I tell you a little bit about how implementation is going. So to do implementation of a major tool, a toolbox, you really have to use a design thinking process. And so we aligned our work using the Stanford D School design thinking process. And it's a 5-prong approach that deals with gathering the empathy along the way, defining what it is you're doing, and then revisiting that definition over and over to get clarity amongst the work, to ideate or brainstorm. In education, we take a lot of tools that have one common thread, and then we bend them all these different ways so that we can get the most out of those tools. Then we prototype and test, and we keep going back, prototype, test, prototype, test. And so we used that process this summer in the short 5 weeks that we had to get the platform up, 3.5 weeks to train 300 plus teachers, live in last year's school system and this year's school system, and get the systems up and going for almost 5,000 users. So what we gathered along the way are 2 types of feedback, data and feedback. So we have systems feedback that tell us how the platform is performing. And from a systems platform level, I will tell you, as of yesterday, I grabbed the data, we have 85,776 student logins to Schoology. We have 28,440 teacher logins to Schoology. And overall, sessions-wise, we have 115,937 logins. So the system itself the platform is functioning quite nice. We use what is known as a single sign-on. So the same Google credentials that our students use, they use that right over to get into Schoology. So it really offers up, 0 login flaws if the systems are matching. To match the login part, they have to go and do something in the system. And so from the creation part, we have had teachers create 24,838 types of materials. And those materials are assignments, links, files, pages, discussions. And when you post items up, you want to have equal or more hits on the other side. We've had 31,950 student and teachers that are learning Schoology submittals. So that is a wonderful tool. And one really fabulous platform statistic is that we have had 305,948 views within Schoology. And that's a wonderful statistic to see, because it tells us that they're making multiple hits off of resources, and they're going back or making other attempts or just taking a second look at something. And so from a systems level, the platform level, the system has performed as expected. We have had, the last data piece we trace with it is our call volume. So I know all spring we kept you up to date on the number of calls that we took on the help desk, and those directly relate to tech usage and the design in the classroom and what kids are able and not able to do. And so just to give you an example, when summer school started, and if you built lessons outside of the platform, which we did have a pretty large group start that way, just because it was nervous, it was unknown, they didn't really understand how to blend it all together. We took almost 1,000 calls that day from people needing help because they didn't understand outside of a platform what to do. When we got the kids into the platform for the middle school, On the first day of middle school, we took 195 calls because there was a problem with Google Meet that day. They changed their security settings. And then the day 2 and 3, day 1, they pushed it to Schoology. Day 2, we took 2 phone calls. And day 3, we took 0 phone calls. My help desk called and they said, we've got a serious problem. Our phones are not working. And I said, no, we've got a good problem. The platform is working and the students are able to get in. And that was a really exciting statistic to show up on the whole implementation plan. So from a systems level, we watch it carefully. We have lots of analytics that we can pull up, and we look for ways every day if we have any wonderings or noticings. We talk about those things. The other feedback piece that is, I would say, just as critical is this concept of technology adoption. So our teachers that did summer school took on it was an incredible gift to technology because we can know all of the systems problems and then all of the training problems that need to transpire from now until the school and then a continuation on. But they also have to make a pretty sociological shift in their mindset of teaching online and teaching differently and perhaps grieving what school used to be like and that comfortableness. And so as we push to the other side, we'll start to get as many successes, we have stumbles. And those stumbles a lot of times are at that user error, but they don't know. And when you stumble, sometimes it's hard and it's, did I do something wrong? Should I blame somebody for it? And so what we're experiencing right now is this grieving period and this changeover from something that was not known to just starting to be known and learning to be known. And so we have been meeting, when we adopted our Stanford design, we went and targeted teachers in pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we've kind of tracked them over time as individuals to look at their uptake and adoption and what problems that they have been experiencing. And then now we're doing feedback cycles. We have completed a pre-K1, a pre-KK. We just finished the K1, the 1-2 today, and then tomorrow are the grades 3-5. And so today we had a wonderful conversation. You can see their growth and use of the platform from, it was really scary and hair on fire, early on, like days 1 through 7. And all of a sudden the transitions that are getting made and the ahas and the learning and the discussions around intentional online delivery. And so those pieces have been very powerful. But what we have noticed are a few critical areas that we are going to work on for them through the rest of the summer. And one of the areas is devices. And so later on, I'm going to come see you to talk about the purchase of a unified device and to have 2 in our district so we can best support our students and our teachers so they don't have to spend their time troubleshooting personal computers and web browsers that aren't up to date and, battery problems and other things that are outside of the control that inhibit a virtual environment. Another area that we really want to work on is to help our staff understand the best way to embed items. So this is a new tool, and there's lots of ways to put a video in. So we want to offer, suggested ways to do that, to teach them how to use there's some great assignment features that can be embedded in and that can help progress monitor and inform instruction. And we're so fortunate because we're going to be able to do that with all the summer staff that have already experienced it and can share it with their peers and then, continue to build and grow over time. What we heard in the lower grades is we probably need to do a nice slow rollout. And, we need to not try to do everything at once, but take one teeny piece and then build on it the next day and then build on it. And our middle school summer program really gathered some important processes and steps that they would do. And so we're taking those lessons learned and being empathetic and designing and asking everybody to go back and think a little bit about how we get over some of the humps and build that excitement and positivity at the grade levels. One third thing that we found revolved around shells, something that we didn't spend enough time on, but I don't think we had enough time, were to build some unified content shells, what you see, that interface when a student enters that enters the learning management system, enters Schoology. And so we looked at how we could make it in the K1, pre-K and 1, more picture-based, more label-based, more with a cadence of 1, 2, 3. And so we talked today and yesterday with the groups about some of those options, and we do have some teacher leaders and early tech adopters that are helping us do that from a K-12 setting, which we think will really inform, improve, and take that uptake of technology moving down the road. And so the last piece I wanted to tell you is we do have lots of PD available to staff, and they have been participating. So right away when we got Schoology, we aren't a small district, so it does take a lot to get everybody trained. We offered a couple of self-paced onboarding courses to let staff enter in at their readiness, their interest, just when the timing was good for them. And to date, we have 930 staff members that have either completed or are in process of completing the Getting Started with Schoology course. And it is a wonderful course to take. And now that you all have accounts, you might just see tomorrow a pop-in of a course in your Schoology, and we'd love to perhaps invite you to a little virtual session to teach you how to get in and use it a little bit, and then let you go and see how it works. So that's a tremendous amount of staff to have that first. It's roughly a 2-hour course, to have them understand what the interface looks like, how you navigate around, how you build yourself a sandbox course so you can play around, and how you can live through some of the student eyes on submitting an assignment, taking an assessment, participating in a discussion. We also offer a similar class for our leaders in our district, building leaders. There's one called Leading Schoology. And then we just opened up another one called Engaging Parents in Schoology. So we have these self-paced series that they can onboard. Then the next thing is we have been bringing them back. We're about 650 at this week trained on that staff-wise, to come back and learn some of the more foundational skills to be moving around. And then we've added a really nice rigor component that will help them in the fall, so that as they start to venture into, getting to those deeper levels of learning and progress monitoring that learning and making informed decisions on that data, those pieces are going to be very helpful to them. And then we're most excited about what's to come. The Teaching and Learning Council has some great PD plans coming up where they're going to roll back into those teaching learning networks and offer a nice slow roll of everyday kind of a procedural. And they'll live through the eyes of a teacher and a student and talk about those instructional moves. And we think those will be really powerful ways for our teachers to get, better engaged, better understood, and not carry all that fear and uncomfortableness and, that whole process. So I just wanted to give you that overview of where we have come.
Dr. Hellstrom, just a couple of things. You've done a great job of giving the overview. A couple of things that are tension points is that ability for classes to meet together, and the concern about Big Blue Button. And I know you've worked through some of that, but I just wanted you to touch on that, because that's an area. It sounds like having more pictures and less text is something that your team is helping them with. So we're getting that part done. So the interface is better for lower L. But could you talk about the class meetings? Like, some of us trustees were in some yesterday, and it was at first very unsettling not to be able to see all of the students. And so I know that you're working on some of that, but let's attack that for a moment, please.
So Big Blue Button is one of the video conferencing tools in our district. We currently have 2 that are available for teachers to use, and both work well inside of Schoology. Google Meet is one where we used all spring, but Schoology offers one called Big Blue Button. It's just another variation of it. It has an intentional practice. So when Big Blue, and teachers seem to either love it or hate it. There's no in between. When a teacher logs into, starts a Big Blue Button conference, you see the teacher, but the students sit in a very hidden capacity. And Big Blue Button was built off of the framework that this was the teacher's mini lesson space, where they wouldn't be distracted by some of the other classroom happenings that would be going on in a virtual world, like siblings walking through, parents walking through, all those different activities that we do know that go on, that we even hush our spouses and significant others through. And then where the students connect or meet are in these breakout rooms, which are connected to Big Blue Button, is where they see everybody. And so those are instructional practices or instructional moves. And so that it's by design. What we've learned is that in any district of our size or bigger, that we really enjoy to have multiple video conferencing tools, because we have so many different ways we want to engage and interact with our students. And so, we definitely have Google Meet, we have Big Blue Button. We would like to offer one other third option, and we have been piloting it securely the last 2 weeks. It goes into classrooms tomorrow to see how it functions. And, it'll probably be a very popular one to the masses. It's a very known one, as we probably sit on it tonight. Mm-hmm. We just think our teachers need some options. And that's one thing that we love about Schoology is, it's that, it's the toolbox, that it's filled with options. And so we want to make sure we fill it with all the tools that staff need in order to do their job.
So I'm hearing it's a slow implementation at Lower L. It's increasing the picture and lessening the text. It's providing various classroom meeting tools inside the toolbox, not just the one. And we'll continue to work on this with teachers over the coming weeks. And we're going to do the right thing launching into fall for children and for teachers.
Yep, we have a secondary course shell is built and going right now through the TLC, the Teaching and Learning Council. And so they're testing it out. We actually will probably run a class that's teacher and Arbor Public Schools teacher-led this Friday to test out that course shell concept and see who's interested to learn about it. We have a small K-5 group of staff that are also working on implementing course shells that would be appropriate at those levels and what they look like, that are picture or icon driven to support that learning. We also are working on a K5, or I'd really say a K2 or more, a crosswalk, the instances you would use Schoology and when you would transition over and use Seesaw as the product and how you use them both together. We had a really great discussion this afternoon. We keep in close contact with our vendors. And so we had a great conversation with Seesaw. We've been a partner for, a couple of years now. Some of our teachers have used it for years. I personally came from a district where we used it a long time. So we've all known each other quite a long time. One of the problems that we came across that is it's got Seesaw doesn't build a static URL, so it makes it hard where you link it along the way. And we were assured today that it's in beta and probably close to being released as a special solution. It was good comfort from our Seesaw rep. We told him that we were doing Schoology. We have been in contact with him about it and ways that we can get Seesaw and Schoology to talk as seamless as possible. And he said, there's just, I get why you need to have a learning management system. And so that's a big deal when your vendors recognize what your needs are. And and we know we'll be in partnership and we enjoy the product. It's just giving its best place use in our digital ecosystem.
Very good. Thank you. And we're ready for questions, President Johnson.
All right. Trustees, if you have, okay. Trustee Kelly.
Thank you. In the olden days, kids would go off to school, they would do lots of projects, they'd have their little bin at school, they'd have their bags, they'd bring home armloads of paper in, grocery bags occasionally. The armloads of projects are now going to be uploaded into the galleries and on Schoology. How is it cleaned out so that my kids, inner thoughts at age 11 don't just exist in the interwebs for the rest of his life?
So it's everything that's built in Schoology is data that's owned by us, and it doesn't ever make it out. It's a password protected, it's a private environment, so it's not something that is viewable out. The only piece that is viewable, but it's still within, would be that student portfolio piece. The work over time gets archived, and we're just getting ready to watch that first archival, so we'll note everything that truly goes to archive versus what's viewable. And we'll look at after 6 months, we need to get we need to get all of our students in to see how the data maps and what we pull out, if we truly delete anything or if we put something in another, archival place. So we'll work on that data piece, but every course a student participates in has a window, and it's done by the, if they're in a semester course, a trimester course, a year-long course. And so everything has a start and a finish component to it, and then goes to an archival mode.
And so maybe I'm just using a lay definition of archive, but to me that means it still exists somewhere and you could get to it if you wanted to. Will parents have the option of having their children's stuff destroyed after a certain amount of time so that it doesn't exist somewhere?
We will look at, we haven't lived in it enough to know. So every year we look at each of our systems and decide what data we want to purge or what data we need to keep for if it's required from the state of Michigan or federal programs. We need to see what our learning data looks like, and then what we want to keep and what we don't want to keep. And so we need to see many more interactions to make those determinations, both for all the stakeholders, what our kids want to keep with them, what our teachers want to keep, and then just miscellaneous data that would, maybe didn't have any use, so we're going to be looking at all those data points that didn't have hits on them, and is there a need to keep that? But we need to have some data to play around with, some data to determine those archival and deletion components.
So I'm
That
hearing,
makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I'm hearing though, Trustee, that there's a internal regulation there that we need to clarify, and we will do so. I'll make a note of that. I also wanted to note before we get away, the sound. Trustee Kelly's question about the sound. Can you respond to that?
Yep. So, the first thing that we're tackling are the students the staff are teaching from the fall from home. So the first order of business is to make sure that they have access to their Ladybug and USB cords or whatever it is that they need to be able to deliver instruction that way. We have been testing the Ladybug for sound as a way to, because a lot of teachers will do I'll show you, then you'll demonstrate to me. So we have been doing some practice sessions to see how noisy things are. And if you each one of us then we do a lot of testing. And so we'll run a session, like somebody will put their TV on and, we'll kind of play it out. We need to test a lot more. We have that next week begins our whole testing phase for all the iPads. We're getting all of the iPads ready to go home, Chromebooks getting ready to go home. And so we'll just start testing all those phases. And that's one of the ones how we figure out. We'll also need to make sure that teachers understand how to use closed captioning and then be considerate of, and then be considerate of having some of the presentation materials done in advance in a screencasting tool, so that, you know, if there is some hardship along the way, or the video recording isn't good, that there's an alternative way for a student to access that same content. And so we did put a tool in the toolbox called Screencast-O-Matic, and have been training staff on how to use it.
Oh, that's really exciting. I'm happy that that's a tool that already exists, so that we can find ways to maximize it. I can just think of so many ways that captioning could be useful for students learning English, or students who are just having trouble hearing because of ambient noise or whatever. That's really exciting. I'm noticing, you know, on Zoom here, that my mic keeps picking up, presumably my fan in the background, and I'm just thinking, you do that times 30 kids in a classroom, and there's lots of ways that audio could be challenging. So thank you for addressing that. And, you know, again, if we need to consider some sort of tech purchase just to maximize the way that students have access to all of the appropriate video and all of the appropriate audio, you know, anytime, of course, but specifically in a time when half of the class is going to be separated from one another, then please keep us in mind. That's all the questions I have. And thank you for such thoughtful answers. And thank you for those numbers at the beginning. From 1,000 calls in a day to 2 to 0. I mean, that's mind-boggling. So obviously it's headed the right direction. And just a big thank you to those 930 staff members who are using part of their summer to be part of this development. It's really humbling to know we're all in this together. So thank you to you, thank you to your team, and thank you to everybody who's getting a head start this summer.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Trustee Gaynor?
Thank you. Just an anecdote. We're talking about technology. I got kicked off of Zoom just at the end of Dr. Kellstrom's presentation. They connected me back on. In fact, yesterday when I attended the Schoology orientation, it took a half hour to get in due to tech issues. And those of you who know I was a classroom teacher for 38 years, I'll tell you there was never a glitch with live classroom teaching.
Right.
Just a sneeze.
Let me try to compose myself. I'm going to bring up my Seesaw question again, as we've continually refined the question of if Seesaw will be usable in the early grades. And I heard yesterday it won't be, but if we could start from scratch to clarify that, will Seesaw be available for teachers who wish to use it, and how will it be used?
Absolutely. Seesaw will be used for teachers for the fall. We have a multi-year agreement with them, and we have put a lot of time into training our teachers, and it has some good tools in there. So Seesaw can currently be accessed by a link, so we have put, as an example to show people, you can take a picture of the Seesaw icon, and behind it in Schoology, you can make a link and it can be a pass-through. We also can link Seesaw on the Clever badge. So, we will likely be sending badges home for kids, just like we have always had, to log in. And one side can be to Schoology and one side can be to Clever, which takes you through. So we want our teachers to use the tools to best support the instructional moves they have to make to grow, student capacity. So we work very closely with them to make sure.
Thank you. I know most parents have said that's worked well for K2, and it's very heartening to know that it's available. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Lazarus.
Thank you, President Johnson. Heather, what a job. People don't realize, but I want you to know, I realize all the work that it takes to get to this point. And it's no easy task. Putting a new platform in, new software, launching, 18,000 devices plus devices. It is quite a feat that you have accomplished, and you've done it well. Thank you very much. One of the things that I always like to ask about new systems is, and one of the questions that, or the complaints that I had received before we even voted on Schoology, was that some of the previous users had freezing issues. Have we had any freezing issues with all of these logins and hits and things like that? Have we had any problems with that?
That's a really good question, Trustee Lazarus. So Schoology was purchased by PowerSchool. So when people talk about some of those Schoology, there's only one time that I know of since COVID, there was an outage of a day, but that's also when about, probably 50 or 60 other thousand people logged into it because they were so desperate looking. Just like we noticed Seesaw was down multiple days and Google Classroom had a problem and everybody had a problem. We have been running every day since we made the purchase of Schoology, the product. We run it on multiple machine types. We, put it through its paces, and we haven't noticed any of those outages or periods or, problems like that. Schoology, being owned by PowerSchool is a powerful organization in that they have unbelievable server capacity. And rumor has it they just have built a server empire underground to handle all of the usage and that uptick. I talk regularly with Schoology to guarantee that they have server capacity all the time for not only us, but for the nation's increase of its usage for the fall. So to date, we have not. We monitor it. Because it's a new system, usually it takes about 6 months to implement. So we implemented it in 5 weeks, and then we've gone back to do tweaks on it. So we've been on it from like 6:30 in the morning till sometimes 2 in the morning, the following morning, and tracking things. And we just haven't noticed any problems in that way. And our students didn't either during summer school.
Good. On the data warehousing, is that offsite in the cloud with Schoology or PowerSchool, or is that, do we have our own data warehouse?
It is done through PowerSchool, and it is done to the government standard levels for it, and that is just very normal. It's a cloud-based, web-based tool that we are using.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The other question that I have is training.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we've got a week to get everybody distributed with equipment and computers and trained. So the kids that have, the 5,000 kids that were in summer school, they've got a little bit of knowledge that you may not have to worry about them. But the rest of the 12,000 kids, we have to do this in a week. How, for parents and for students who need a little more help than videos and just reading online, that kind of thing, a little more face-to-face, is it possible, or have we considered maybe providing some socially distancing, safe training for those individuals that really, really need help with this?
We have talked about it on our team. We're getting ready to allocate one of our team members to work on both connectivity for families, and then we probably will also see if we can work with our with Mrs. Bacalor to talk about how we can get some socially distanced training set up, probably strategically in the communities, and outfitting, a location with a little Wi-Fi, and then doing a little, let's see if we can learn this together. We also have a hotline that is well used. We're now 14,000 plus calls in. So it's amazing. Everybody knows how to call us. And if they pick up their device, we'll be able to help them because we know exactly what we're looking for, and we can talk them through it. And we probably even can do some kind of screen sharing. And then we also looked at doing some virtual small group gatherings.
Dr. Kellstrom, I don't want to interrupt you, but those Connect Plus groups out in our community centers,
Yep.
I know that many of our community center leaders are going to participate in Schoology training. so that, and we're delighted that they want to do so, so that we can actually make sure the kids get the help right there too.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's going to take a team.
Yeah.
And just like when we went to do deployment of devices and hotspots, we worked with a lot of people. You know, when we did our homeless population, it was a large group of people that had to have a hand in so we could get everybody serviced with devices and hotspots. And so we'll reach out. We also are in, we work closely with the school librarians. And so we're going to try to tackle this from just a really multi-pronged approach. And, you know, our goal has always been not leave one person behind. I mean, we've always prided ourselves on that, and we'll make sure we allocate a person too on our team just to handle that.
Great. I just have one other question. I had the pleasure of being one of your guinea pigs the other day, and I made a mistake. I admit it. I wasn't a good student in the beginning. But it made me realize the importance, and I know there's been parents that have concerns because they're very mindful of the financial situation that the district is in. And but the reason why we're going to a one-to-one technology computer program with our students is to make sure that these computers are updated, they have the right software version, they're not conflicting with other logins. I mean, that's one of my big faux pas. I was logged into my wrong Google account and it wouldn't let me in, and it just sat there and it did a little death color wheel thing. But it was an easy fix, but it's just hard to understand that, you know, these are the resources that in order to deliver the technology in the fashion that it needs to be delivered in, that it won't frustrate the student or the parents, that the one-to-one plan for technology really does play a big part in this. And I was kind of on the fence with that a little bit, but after going through that little session with you the other day, I realized why it plays such a big, important part in the success of this launch in the fall. So I would encourage parents to really consider that and take part in the one-to-one. I know parents would like to also use their own, but I know Dr. Kelsom is willing to work with them too. But it's something that really, there is a part for this one-to-one launch. So I just want to share that with the parents. My last question is about parent access in Schoology. What will parents see, and why do they need to have access that instead of using their kids' access, why do they need a specific access into Schoology?
Well, what's really nice about it first is it's a pathway to send communication, either from a building level, a district level, and a classroom level. So having, you know, one thing our parents talked about a lot in the fall were the, 31 emails that they received over X number of days. And so having that common platform where they know they can get their information will be beneficial. Also, knowing that they can pop into any of their child's classrooms, they can see what assignments are out there, and then they'll also be able to see the child's success along the way. And having that level of transparency when we are in a remote environment, a digital environment, virtually, where, we have our eyes and ears, but, how do we know what's going on? And our parents have to help out. It just lets them really see where the rubber meets the road and what's happening with learning. And that can happen at all levels along the way. I had a interesting email from a pre-K teacher, which was, I think it was really, she serves 3-year-olds. And she was so excited to get a grade book, not to issue an A, B, or C, but to be able to put a rubric in there to say your child's below, approaching, above. And it's that feedback. Now we have this new level of feedback that will be in real time for our parents to see. And then they'll be able to see access to just the student work. It's a wonderful thing. It's one thing that student parents like about Seesaw is you actually get to see the work in production, and it's powerful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.